When I last talked about the show, I had only seen 3 episodes and things were iffy. They did not improve. So guys, I really debated whether or not I was going to come back and address the issue of Iron Fist because I have now finished it. If you're wondering why I'm as scruffy as I am and probably not sounding at my best, I've been sick the last few days, and part of how I have been spending my time was by getting through the remainder of Iron Fist. I had posed the question twice up to this point, does it suck? Well, first positing the question, what happens if it sucks? And then last time talking about only the first 3 episodes, does it suck? And having now seen the entire scope of the thing, yeah, guys, it kind of does. And I know I'm not the only person to say that. Obviously, the critics ripped into this thing like you wouldn't believe. So, you know, part of me felt like I don't have anything to add to the conversation. But then I realized that part of the reason that I was slogging through it was because I knew I was going to have to rant about it, and I would have felt like a jerk if I hadn't at least finished the whole thing through. So I was watching it out of spite. But look, not everything is bad in this. So let's start positive. The big positive for me, Madame Gao. I loved her before. I loved getting more of her. She's still good. She's still enigmatic. Just this real sense of power in this little woman, even when she doesn't, surprise send somebody across the room. I like her. I like her a lot before. I like her even more now. I will be happy to see more of her. I would like her to come back in the Defenders. I had mentioned before that the corporate intrigue intrigued me, fittingly enough, and that kind of held true through the whole thing. I think the storyline I had the most investment in ultimately was in the Meachums. There was something it was almost kind of Lannisters-esque, if you follow Game of Thrones, in terms of this family really striving for power, and yet they don't always seem to be on the same page, and they don't always seem to want the same things, yet they're all striving to maintain control. And I liked that. I liked watching that play out. I liked seeing where different characters landed at different points in the story. I thought it was really interesting with Harold, sort of how long it took me to get a sense of what his deal was. And even when I found out, this is your warning, spoilers, I'm talking about the whole thing. So even when we find out his deal where every time he comes back from the dead, he's basically a little worse, I still found that interesting because there's a part of him that's still striving to make his family better, but there's this darkness inside him that is growing because he has now died and come back again, so now he's worse than he was before. And that whole dynamic I found interesting. I thought the performances for them were pretty solid. Although, it probably should be a little telling that in your Kung Fu action series, the story that interests me the most has the least to do with that. But anyway, moving on, sticking positive. Colleen Wing, there were issues with her, but the actress, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, and I'm still recovering, so I don't feel up to looking up stuff right now. I'm just rambling. But she had good presence and good charisma. I'm not a huge fan of the character use. I may come back to that. Claire's always good. I mean, everything Rosario Dawson does, she is always good, even if the overall thing is crap. Now, before I get into the flat-out bad stuff, I'm going to straddle the line briefly with one thing, and that is damning by fine praise, which is that I'm going to single out one action scene that I really liked, but it's the only one I'm going to talk about in a positive light, because all the other action scenes I didn't enjoy. But that is the fight in China with, for lack of a better term, Drunken Master. That was fun, and it was inventive. I mean, not completely original. Like I said, it is Drunken Master, but that was good, and I liked that character as well. I really wish we got more of him. He was fun, and he was funny, and he was energetic, and he had a good sort of mocking rapport with Danny. So that was a good fight, and we'll transition into the junk, because like I said, all the other fights I was debating whether I want to open with my overriding criticism that sinks the whole thing or whether I want to build up to it. I think I'm going to try and build up to it because once I start rambling about that, it's going to dominate everything. So, first of all, the stakes. I don't really get what they were because, what is being threatened throughout this show? The control of the Rand Corporation. Okay, why do I care who runs this corporation? Especially considering I don't really understand why Danny wants it and what he would do with it if he had it and how it would be any better than what the Meachums are doing. Because, yeah, there's some skeevy stuff going on, but in the world, and if we're being at least semi-realistic, they are not the world's worst corporation. Like that drug that Danny was like, we're going to sell it at cost. That's fine and noble and everything, but as even the board laid it out, it's like, okay, we are going to make it available and it will get sold to the people who need it. We will just also make a profit off it. I'm like, I kind of find that acceptable in the corporate world. So who controls Rand? Don't care. Don't get where the stakes are. There's a threat to Kunlun. Well, that might have worked if we knew anything about the place whatsoever. We don't really see it at all. And so it's really hard to be invested in the fate of a place that we haven't seen. We don't know. All we know is the little bits that Danny has told us. And it's not really clear, why it's, I mean, we know the hand wants it. We don't really know why, what they would do with it. What is the value of Kunlun? Why should I be worried that it's threatened? And I understand there's answers to all this, like in the comics, but I'm restricting this to the TV show because the TV show has to stand on its own 2 feet. I've mentioned the action scenes already. Again, the main thing is, well, there's there's a lot, okay? I can't even say what the main thing is. There's a lot that doesn't work about most of the fight scenes. First of all, a lot of them are slow, and I mean the movements, especially when it's Danny, and it's obviously Finn Jones, the actor. He does not sell the physicality of someone who does combat martial arts very well at all. He can kind of sell the slower Tai Chi-y kind of thing, but like there's no tension in his limbs, in his fingers. When he does something like this and he goes to hit somebody, this is me doing it with tension in my fingers. He does it a bit more like this, and I'm like, that makes the hits look soft, because regardless of whether you tell me this is a real way to do it or not, it doesn't matter, because when this hits somebody, there's no sense of impact or sense of tension. When this hits somebody, there's a sense of tension and impact, and if the hits don't look like they hurt, it doesn't sell the fight. And every time he was fighting, nothing he did felt like it hit, felt like it hurt. And then there was the mess of things that they did to cover up the fact that they obviously knew he wasn't very good in the fights, like the high angle shots where they could easily drop in the stunt double, how many cuts there were. I mean, these sorts of fights are best when they are allowed to have long takes. I said way before the first reviews even started coming out, what I was looking forward to are long take kung fu fights, and I mean these things are chopped up to heck. And what does this show have against lighting a scene properly? They do it in the action scenes a lot, and I know part of that's another way to try and hide the fact that the action is not very good. But they did like normal scenes horribly late. You can barely see anything. And the hand, the whole thing with the hand was almost interesting, but they opened a can of worms and then just let them crawl all over the place. Because we get this notion, this interesting notion that maybe the hand isn't bad, but they're after something good, but maybe just using harsh means to get it. This is sort of introduced, and there's potential in that idea, but it doesn't work for a couple of reasons. First of all, as I said, we haven't properly established Kunlun, and so if we don't have proper expectations established in this place that has been training Danny, you can't subvert those expectations, because again, all we know is stuff that we know only secondhand. So the idea of, oh, they're really the bad guys, maybe, like that has minimal impact besides me just going, okay, I'm listening. It also doesn't work because they drop that angle so quickly and it's like, oh, no, this hand is bad too. But then there's the whole idea of like there's more than one hand. That feels like a cop-out because it feels like somebody had the idea, look, what if we introduce the idea of the hand not being that bad? And then someone's like, well, Madame Gao is obviously very bad. It's like, okay, so there's more than one segment of the hand then. Except that doesn't pan out, at least not as they laid it out here, because, okay, so there's segments of the hand. Is there an overriding force of the hand that is like above these two sort of battling segments? If so, which one are they more likely to align with? So like, is Madame Gao's version of the hand, is that truer, or is Bakuto's version of the hand truer? And if neither is the case, and the hand is in fact not very well organized at all, and it's just a whole bunch of just assorted segments all claiming to be the hand, but really none of them are because they can't agree on anything, I kind of would like to know if that's the setup, because that's the only thing I can come up with, but that's just me trying to fit these pieces together. Now, I mentioned briefly Colleen ultimately doesn't work for me. She doesn't work mainly because of character use. I think the actress played it well enough, but the character, I mean, the instant they hooked up, I had a big sigh of relief when Danny said, oh, I took a vow of chastity. I'm like, oh, good. They're not going to turn this into a pointless love interest. It's now a pointless love interest. And the vow of chastity never came up again. Like, not even an acknowledgement that he broke this, or what that means, or does it mean anything, or what will he lose his power? What? And I suppose that we'll just transition right into Danny, and Danny is the big thing that does not work. So, all right, I'm only gonna bring this up because I did a video talking about it before. In terms of the racial casting, I did ultimately come to the conclusion before the show had started airing that maybe it would have been better if they had cast a Chinese American actor in the part. Having now seen the show, it would have made absolutely no difference whatsoever. It wouldn't have helped the show either way, and it wouldn't have hurt it anymore. Because I had heard people, in response to what I wrote, sort of make the argument of sort of some of the, I hesitate to call them benefits, but some of the story aspects that in the comics have been milked out of the fact that Danny is white, mostly having to do with his training in Kunlun and how he is adopted into this society but is an outsider within it. And that's hinted at very minusculely in the show, but it's not properly mined for any drama, again, because we don't really see Kunlun. So I feel like changing his ethnicity really wouldn't have impacted the story, and it would have been the same impact if he just had been, had been living in America. He would have been just as much of an outsider, regardless of his ethnicity. But making him Chinese American would not have fixed anything. There's so much at this point, I'm glad they didn't, because there's so much wrong with this show. I would really hate to think that if they had cast a Chinese American actor, that there would have been a certain stripe of fan who would have come in and said, see, this is what happens when you change the race of a character, when the problems with the show have nothing to do with that. And even if they had done that, wouldn't have been the problem either. So at this point, I'm glad they didn't, given how much the thing sucks. And I'm glad people don't have that to scapegoat. Danny, between being rich and how pompous he is in terms of his training and like, I am the Iron Fist, you know what he feels like? The hipster with prayer beads wishing namaste to the barista at Starbucks who's giving him his chai tea and then he doesn't leave a tip. That's who he feels like. He walks into Colleen's dojo and starts lecturing her on how to teach and how to run a dojo. He spouts Buddhist aphorisms out of nowhere. His own personal, what Danny is about, is he naive? Is he too trusting? He is the most easily manipulated lead character I can ever ever. Everybody manipulates him. Harold Meacham manipulates him. Madame Gao manipulates him. Colleen Wing manipulates him. Bakudo manipulates him. Davos manipulates him. Every single person in the show manipulates him like that. It's stupid easy. And I've already seen people making arguments well, he was away for 15 years. What do you expect? It doesn't matter if you can justify it. It makes him impossible to root for as a lead character because he doesn't show any sort of understanding or drive. He's not learning at any point. And even if you can justify that behavior, that doesn't make him a good lead. It just gives you a justification for this lousy thing I'm having to watch. And it doesn't help that for the vast majority of the show, I don't understand what Danny wants. I don't know why he's interested in Rand as a company. By the end, I'm still not entirely sure. Is it just about the name? Is it about his father's legacy? He doesn't seem to give a crap about the money. Why did he come back? He didn't come back to fight the hand. Eventually the why did he come back does get answered very sort of haphazardly and tossed off, but it's episode 11. And up until that point, I'm I don't understand why he's here. I don't understand why he's doing anything that he's doing. How am I supposed to root for somebody who I don't get and I can't relate to? And I do not understand how he ever became the Iron Fist. Just on so many levels. Mainly the big one is just the total lack of discipline, the total lack of control. And I get that the final test is just defeating the dragon. I'll come back to that dragon. So I understand that it's just that and all he has to do is survive and he becomes the Iron Fist. But how was he ever disciplined or whatever enough that they would pick him and allow him to take that trial? I don't buy it. He doesn't have, he talks about, push my emotions. He never has control of his emotions, not even at the beginning. So it's not like we're watching him crack over time. He never seems to be in proper control of his emotions. And exactly how does the Iron Fist tie into his emotions? That is completely inconsistent all over the place too. Sometimes it seems activated by his anger. Later on, he's completely thrown off because he's too angry and he can't concentrate. They keep tossing out the concept of chi. They don't really explain it even within world. And it's they treat it like it's the Force, this all-purpose plot installation. Oh, chi! Look, I realized how much I hated Danny when I realized the points of watching the show in which I was most likely to go, yeah, were all the points when other characters told him he was an idiot. When Ward Meacham did it, I cheered. When Claire did it, I cheered. When other people point out how stupid he is, I'm like, yes! Because he's so dumb! dumb. And even aside the fact that he doesn't sell the choreography, he's not, even in the context of the story, he's not the best warrior. So why would I root for this guy? He's not a great fighter. He's not a great leader. I don't understand his motivations. I can't even really vouch for the fact that he's a good guy. He's got some vague moral things like, okay, fine. He's not strong-willed. He doesn't seem worthy of the power that he has. He doesn't seem to appreciate the fact that maybe he needs to earn being worthy of that. He's just got this very, I want it, so I am the Iron Fist. And like, he doesn't even understand what he's doing. And like, oh my God, how stupid was that thing? He was like, summon the Iron Fist. Now open your hand. Huh? Oh, look, I understand he was showing him something new, but just the way you translate that, it's like, open your hand. Oh my God, my hand does not need to be a fist. This is amazing. And you know, they really should have just tossed the idea of doing Iron Fist, because I'm pretty sure it was something that they landed at by default. Because when they decided they were going to do Jessica Jones, like, okay, well, we'll do Jessica Jones, and then, you know, Luke Cage, very obvious thing to spin off from that, because Luke Cage is part of her story. Cool. Well, you know, if we do Luke Cage, we should really do Iron Fist, because they're so often paired together. And then they locked themselves down and committed to that. I feel like they never had a plan for this. They never knew what they were going to do, and they should have canned it the instant that they realized they weren't going to give this thing a budget to properly realize Kunlun as a location or the goddamn dragon. Two glowing, you build up a dragon. He fought a dragon, and all we get, two glowing eyes in the dark. F you. Don't promise what you can't deliver. I just hope to God that this guy has amazing chemistry with Luke Cage when we get to the Defenders. Because if he doesn't, there is no reason to keep this guy around. He's insufferable. And he is going to be the brick around the neck of this as a franchise, because pretty much everything else I talked about can be improved. We can do better fight choreography. We can do longer takes. We can get a freaking lighting setup in there. We can come up with a plot that makes more sense. But unless they recast, we're still stuck with this guy and this interpretation of the character, and it's awful. So that's it, guys. You know what I think has been really telling about this? When I first started watching it on Netflix, because you know they've got the star rating. When I first started watching it, I think it was even the day that it premiered, or it was soon after, that it had 5 stars. Because obviously that's based off user ratings. By the time I finished it, it had dropped down to like maybe 3 1/3. I think it's very clear that, you know, hardcore people went in there and they gave it the 5-star. Either on hope or maybe because they genuinely liked it. If you liked it, fine, that's great. But I think as more and more people are getting through it, it's becoming clearer and clearer that not everyone is loving this thing. So what I'd like to say is, as much as I just had to rant all this out, did you actually like Iron Fist? If you did, I want to hear about it. I want to hear, I want to have a reasonable discussion as to what it was you actually liked about it. So if you want to do that, or heck, if you want to pile onto the hate I just laid onto this thing, whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.